Do you remember what you thought when you heard police claiming that a Tory MP's work computer had been found with thousands of pornographic images on it? You might have been struck by how little public outcry, even surprise there was. Conservative colleagues rushed to defend Damian Green, who denied all the charges, believing it outrageous the police had stored records of a 10-year-old investigation. Others reminded us the images were not illegal, were not extreme. Of course, we don't know who downloaded those images or who used them or even how. But instead tonight we're asking a bigger question. Has porn become socially acceptable, even in the workplace? Are we less shockable than we used to be? Jerry Barnett is a free speech campaigner and author of Porn Panic. Clarissa Smith is Professor of Sexual Cultures at the University of Sunderland. And Steve Pope is a psychotherapist who specialises in young people addicted to pornography. He joins us from Salford. Very nice to have all three of you here. Clarissa, I'm going to start with you. As far as we know, do lots of people look at pornography at work?
Well, there's been numerous anecdotal kinds of stories around that, actually. And those have varied from at least 80% of the workforce look at 5 minutes of porn a day, or down to, you know, very few people do it. So there are people looking at pornography at work.
When you say 80%, is that divided between the sexes? Or?
Well, I mean, this is a problem, right, with statistics about pornography. We get straight into that, where they're extrapolations from, you know, questions that were asked in particular workplaces. No one really knows what the stats are on porn and who's watching and where they're watching. But, I mean, we can be sure, I think, that people are looking at pornographic materials at work, simply because we know that they spend their time doing other kinds of wasting their boss's time, you know, looking at eBay, buying things on Amazon, bit of lolcats and all the rest of it.
So you would put, or people are putting porn in that same bracket, right? It's like Facebook or internet shopping or funny cat videos.
I think if someone's doing it, looking at these things on their own, in their own office, a private office, they're not involving anyone else, then the chances are that, yes, it is like that.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Jerry, did the story surprise you? I mean, we're not putting names into it, we're not looking to sort of attach blame or whatever you'd call it, but would it surprise you if a lot of people spent a lot of time at work or in a work environment?
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I find from a lot of my, you could say, civilian friends are much more likely to share porn on WhatsApp groups and so on than I am. So, I mean, it's pretty ubiquitous. I mean, typically small clips go around via WhatsApp and people don't seem to think very much of it. I think if anything was shocking, it was the idea that people would be shocked by the idea that an MP might look at porn, which, as you say, allegedly was completely legal and, you know, wasn't out of the ordinary at all. What worries me a lot more, because I've been tracking what I call the porn panic over at least a decade now, for a start, the moral panic has seemed to have been just within the media class and the political class, and from campaigners and people who
when you say moral panic, just explain what you're talking about.
Over many years, we've been told that falsely that porn is linked to sexual violence. It's linked to words like objectification, sexualization, porn addiction, scary ideas, and actually, what I wanted to do in writing my book was to look at why this panic is happening. And actually, in the Digital Economy Act this year, which was passed in April, the government used porn as an excuse to make Britain the first democratic country on earth to introduce an internet censor with the excuse of regulating pornography. And I think that's a huge news story, which so far the media's mostly missed.
Let me just go to Steve Pope. Do you accept this as a classification of panic over porn, Steve?
Well, I think we should be concerned about it. You know, I don't do statistics, I don't do labels, people don't get well from labels. What I do is the fact that people are dying, kids are having a very jaundiced view of sex and watching pornography from the age of 12 and the effect it has. We're having to pick up the pieces. What we're encouraging in society is for kids to have sex and then try and find an emotional relationship. It's interwoven in our society, and to downplay it like that gentleman just done, just did is wrong.
I think Steve
it's
said
very, very serious.
You said you don't want to cause panic, and then went on to say,
No,
say
he did
people
say
are
that. He said
dying.
he didn't want to use statistics, but actually, why wouldn't you panic? I mean, Steve works with young people. He works with children who have that.
Can I just say today, I've worked with a couple, a 12 and 13-year-old, and both of them think that 50 Shades of Grey is a normal way to sexually act out. Now, if we think that's acceptable in society today, the problems are bigger than even I think.
We've been here before, actually. We had this during the 1980s with the Video Nasties Act. We've had it with the American horror comics in the 1950s. And the problem is that when we say, oh, well, kids think this way and they do that and it's terrible and we need to deal with pornography because it must be porn that's at the root of all of this. I mean, I take the points that you make about the fact that kids are not learning about emotional or sexual relationships in well-rounded ways, but then porn isn't responsible for the education of children.
You don't believe it's that damaging?
What I think is a problem, if we do believe that porn is the problem, then we should have comprehensive sex education that actually recognises that young people need lots of information, that it will need to be explicit, that we'll need to recognise what sex means in a broader context than just reproduction.
I mean, when you talk, Jerry, and you talk about, people sharing porn on WhatsApp, presumably you get it on your phone, you look at it wherever you are. I've talked to female colleagues who say the idea that somebody is, looking at porn at their desk and then carrying on a totally normal conversation with a colleague 2 minutes later is really freaky. Do you not?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's probably not best done at work, and porn.
But it is. That's the point, right? I mean,
people look at it at work and enjoy it, and if it upsets people, yeah, I mean, it's probably not suitable in the workplace. But this is an employment issue. It's not a harm issue. I'd just like to quickly quote from the government's done research into this. So I'd like to first of all point out, porn addiction is, there's a lot of doubt cast on whether this element actually exists or not, and people do make money. The porn addiction therapy has been compared to the gay cures of the religious right in America a while back. But if I could just quote from a government report, because the government researches harm in porn, it said, research with adults indicates no relationship between the commission of sex crimes and the use of pornography at an early age. In comparison, there is evidence for the opposite effect. So at a mass level, there's
yeah, let me go back to Steve. Come on.
Look, here we go again, quote, quote, quote. I work day in, day out with young children from the age of 12 to 17 who are materially influenced by what they see as being normal sexual acts, which are usually sexually aggressive acts. They're acting out behaviours and they look for a bigger and bigger hit. They can instantly access it on their iPad.
But the evidence suggests that among teenagers, sexual violence has fallen since porn has become
I'm just telling you what I see on the street.
I'm hands-on. I can't counter your anecdotes.
I'm hands-on. I see it happen every day. And what I'm saying is that children are being influenced, and it's an awful influence on them by the effect of pornography. And I agree with the lady, we have to take it into primary schools and we have to educate children on the potential evils, because it's an addictive issue. Not everybody's affected, but it's an addictive issue, and an instant high is for a 12 to 17-year-old, especially boys, looking at pornography, and we have to do something about it quickly.
Clarissa, and the point is the ease, isn't it? The accessibility. I mean, if it is skewing, there is nothing really that shuts this down. When you talk about people using it almost as a boredom tool at work.
But there are a whole set of things that we're mixing up here around when we talk about how does media influence young people. There are various levels of reality that people engage with when they're viewing media, and porn is just one form of talk about sex in our culture. It's not the only talk about sex, it is one form of it. And actually, one of the problems that we have is that we're not offering good counters to young people. But actually, when we're in this process, we're talking about porn at work, and we've ended up talking about 12-year-olds. And these are not the same thing, right? And so actually, where adults may well be looking at porn at work, we could talk about, well, why is work so boring that that's what's happening? But also, if we're going to talk about accessibility, there are things around the ways in which our work and home lives have changed, and actually that kind of border between them have disappeared. So actually, you know, WhatsApp is
We carry
an
our
app.
smartphones everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're doing that all the time.
That is a whole bigger question, but
Yeah.
it was great to have the chance to talk to you all. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Thank you.